these so-called low-functioning, non-verbal children and adults are very intelligent autistically. They are even more, you see, what do we measure with IQ tests? IQ tests were designed to measure whether this child or person is delayed, right? But their development is very, very different. They can be brilliant at something and they can be very poor at something else. My son cannot tie up his laces. Okay, I buy him shoes without laces. Yeah, I've given up. But he is so good at other things, you know, and so on and so on. So, for example, as I told you, that he can sort of assess my emotional state while I'm still outside the door. Donna Williams writes a lot about her abilities, which are really, really different. And this, being autistic, Jim Sinclair, does not mean being unable to learn, but it does mean there are differences in how learning happens. And so that is why we have to remember, we have to know the person and teach them working with autism, not against it. Because autism and his style, perceptual styles, and his cognitive autistic abilities will help you. And this one, please, this one is important, 2 more quotes. Measuring non-autistic people by autistic type of development would often find them failing miserably and appearing to be thoroughly subnormal by autistic standards. Trust me, this is true. And this one, non-autistics can be considered idiots in the autistic world too, just as it can be the other way around. Please remember about it. So the reality we believe exists depends on, their reaction, no time. So there is so much to say. But anyway, please remember, their reactions and actions are logical. That's what I find, very logical, if you know what is going on. And rational, because they are dictated by their reality, which is very, very different from our normal reality. So the question remains, whose reality is more real? And learning about parallel worlds will help us understand and help each other. This is very important. And by the way, if you haven't got this book, please don't buy it. Because this is the first edition, this is the second published in the beginning of this year, and it's based on this book anyway. And please let us start learning to switch perspectives, and then, because which way are the stairs headed, up or down? Because otherwise they may go up and we may go down, you know what I mean? If we don't learn to switch to their perspective.
Empathy can be defined as looking through each other's eyes. For us to truly know and understand another being, we need to be able to look through their eyes, and see the world from their perspective without thinking about it. And children are very, very good at this. Children have an automatic connection with animals because they are free of lots of ideas or expectations. And animals tune in very easily to kids as well. There's just natural instinctive communication. So all the adults in the audience, be wise and listen to your children and what they're saying about the animals and the plants, because they're picking up messages directly. Particularly the younger the child is and the less language is interfered, the more direct knowing is available. It's well known the great relationship between elephants and their keepers. That's an orphaned elephant in Africa. These young elephants, if they're orphans, they die from heartbreak unless they have someone with them 24/7. The bottom picture is of an orca and a dog having a little greeting. And the tiger was in the Thailand zoo. His mother rejected him when he was born, and the only other animal who had young at the time was a pig. So they put him with the pig, and he grew up with his little piglet brothers and sisters, and now they live happily together. And he doesn't think they're food, they're his brothers and sisters. So what do we use telepathic communication for? We use it for all sorts of ways to try to understand animals better so that we can help them meet their wishes or their needs. We can use it for helping veterinarians understand their physical symptoms or describe their physical symptoms to find out what's wrong with them or what care they need. It can help with resolving behavioral issues and various distressing things. Most importantly, though, it can enhance our relationship with them. So it's very helpful to calm animals down if they are in distress or if a bird has fallen out of the nest. And it's not about physical expression. It's not about facial expression. It's not about interpreting behavior, because that is our minds busy trying to interpret things. It's definitely not about body language. When us humans see an animal in a certain posture or certain body language, we tend to assume certain things. It's really not about body language. Animals are doing what they're doing for their reasons. How does it work? Every day we have moments of intuition. We have little gut feelings or little hints or sudden messages fall into our head, and we need to learn to trust those. That's really what it's about. And it's about the energy behind the concepts, not the actual words. So sending is automatic. Animals send, we send information, and it's really not about the words. Okay. Us humans tend to hang up on the idea of words, but if we're genuinely in distress and are saying help or ouch or I'm really sore, I'm really unhappy, animals understand the feeling and the energy of it. It doesn't matter what we're actually saying. Luckily, they don't interpret things from a language point of view. And as they say, cats are their own particular species who may not actually talk and definitely are less likely to respond when we want them to. So we need to honor the animals and their species as well. There are simple steps, we'll talk more about this afterwards, but they're very simple steps to intentionally connecting with an animal telepathically or with a plant telepathically. They're very, very simple. So simple that we tend to think, well, they can't be real, or this is too easy. But it's really not a complicated thing. We just have to have our hearts and our minds in the right place. Usually one of the first things to do, therefore, is to relax, to consciously relax. Relaxing the body can help relax the mind, because we need to become still. When our minds are still, we can tap into our deeper knowing, which is the intuition. So being still is very much the first step. Being quiet, not with music or meditation, just being quiet, watching your breathing. And then coming down to being very calm and open, connecting with the heart. It really is about coming down into the wisdom of the heart and to imagine that you're connecting. If you would like, you could have a visualization that imagines you reaching out to connect with the animal. Better to just visualize it than to actually do it, because that might disturb them physically, and that might get your mind all involved in the physical interaction, which it's really not about. It's about being in a quiet space of heart connection. You could imagine reaching out to them, particularly if they're not in the same room as you, because this kind of energy transmission can happen across great distances. The telepathic energy transference is not at all affected by buildings or mountains or distance. You can communicate with a dog in your room or a dog on the other side of the world. But most important is to be quiet. Here at Findhorn, you have very good access to places and practices to instill that. I noticed since my last visit, there's a nice new bright wood sign on the gate of the original garden saying, "Be still and know." And that is really what it's about. If you become still, you know. You know. You don't think about stuff, you just know.
This is such a great book. Autism and Sensing, The Unlost Instinct by Donna Williams. Can someone appear unaware, even unable to retain, reason or reflect, yet actually have capabilities, even they didn't know they had? This book demonstrates how and why this is sometimes possible and will change the way you think about hidden potential and how to help them release it. The realm of sensing is the place we have all come from. That world before mind was brought off as me before body became mine. That time when we knew because we felt the nature of things. The feel of them when we sensed. This was before we had learned to interpret and see the world not as was but through our concepts and ideas of what it was. My world. One's own world. This is our first world, before all of its later cladding and contortions. It is at first a place of sensing, beingness, the pre-conscious mind and unknown knowing. It is the place where we understand self in others and others in self through the skill of emergence.
So the system of sensing is our first world, and in our first world, we're really in our own world. It's this place where we accumulate huge amounts of experiences, sensory experiences, emotional waves, tones, movement, textures, smells, sounds, colours, patterns. We're both sensing this stuff, we are intuiting this stuff, we are experiencing it by merging with it. We become part of the music. We feel the music inside of us. We become part of that texture until we can't feel the separateness of ourselves and that texture. We're wrapped up in that texture. We experience the colours, but we move through the colours, and the colours feel like they're moving through us. We meet, we encounter people, but we experience them like a kind of living music, like this music of beingness that has a different shape, in a sense, each one. And their shape changes how we experience it. So it's not yet a world of self and other. It's a world of self in other and other in self. And it's not a world of imitating. It's a world of merging in order to know something as the basic sensory and emotional experience of what we're merging with. When I moved out of this place of purely pattern, theme and feel, when I was moving out of a place of merging and self in others and others in self, where to know something, you resonated with it and you felt it within you. And I moved out of this into a place where part of me was now incarnated, if you like, quite in the body. And so there was beginning to be, if you like, this separateness between the my world and the external world, a dialogue, an interplay, and a transition, but a progressive separateness. And this meant I would get up inside of the tree. I didn't stand outside the tree. I didn't yet have enough of that, self and other separateness to stand outside of the tree and experience the tree. I got inside the tree to feel as the tree and putting my face into, the blossoms and of this lemon tree and the buzz of the bees around me and the warmth of the sky and the light that was coming through these shaded green leaves. And it was like a symphony. I felt I was swept up in this symphony of this experience of this thing. And I didn't have a word of trees. I didn't have words like bees or blossoms. Those concepts were not existing. These were sensory experiences, and the emotional reaction that they brought out in me of joy and connection. And I'd get this from wallpaper books, and I'd get this from carpet, and I'd get this from the sparkles in the air, and I'd get this from birds fluttering inside of a bird aviary I'd climbed into, and I'd get this from the sound of gravel under my feet. I think that when we see children who are living like that, we tend to think, either, they're like a fairy, or, are they autistic? Because they have not yet moved into that world of mind and meaning. But this is actually a very normal transition, and we all grow at very different rates, and it's okay not to fast track. It's okay for people to retain awareness of what those stages are.
Living in harmony with nature, and the most amazing reciprocal relationships are possible. It's also about physical considerations. We need to go quietly and perhaps somewhat camouflaged into nature. One of my favorite animals in Africa is the meerkat. And we can get closer to animals in nature if we are being unobtrusive in the environment, if we're not wearing big, bright colors, if we're not talking loudly or thinking loudly, even if our mouths are shut. So it's about having a quiet way of walking and being. It's about being quiet within. That is truly the only requirement for this at all. And when one is quiet within, the most amazing things can happen. I was sitting on a boat in a channel on the coast of South Africa, and I found out afterwards, a white-throated swallow came and sat on the wire, on the stay of the boat, and I wanted to respect his need for a rest, I thought, so I moved away, and he followed me, and I moved around to the other side of the boat, and he followed me, and eventually I communicated with him, and he was just curious, who are you, and what do you feel like? So I offered my hand so he could feel what I felt like, and he hopped onto my hand. And we had a lovely chat about the weather, literally about the weather, because the weather matters to a young swallow trying to fly across a channel. So amazing things can happen when you're genuinely open and peaceful. Had I been trying to have a connection with that sparrow and within myself reaching and grabbing for it, I bet it wouldn't have happened, because I would have been wanting something of that experience. It comes down to shared awareness. Beyond words, beyond physical action and beyond behavior, it's about being in a space with an animal, with a plant, with a flower, touching or not, and about being in a state of shared awareness. It doesn't always have to be this huge conversation where there's question and answer to and fro. Just sitting quietly in the presence of another is a beautiful communion, even if it's not a communication. And our dear Dorothy has this lovely transmission from the plant kingdom. And this is truly how I experience it as well. We quietly radiate to you, and it is as if you must stop and listen to us. All of nature, all around us, is constantly radiating and being authentic and expressing who they are. All we have to do is slow down and stop long enough to be still, to hear. And that's the invitation for all of us in our daily lives. Because we are, on a building block level, all parts of the same universe, and exactly the same kinds of parts. We're in this constant flow and motion. So why not enjoy the dance and get to know our dancing partners, every aspect of the plant, animal, mineral, elemental kingdom around us.
And more good books.